What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 37 of my ranking and reviewing Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album. And today it's Joe's Garage. I'm going to rank these 6 solos according to my favorite. And then after I talk about each one briefly, I'll show you what it looks like in writing, and then I will show you where this album falls amongst the other 36 I've already done based on guitar solos only. To start off, this is a fantastic release as far as guitar solos go. Amazing. There is not a bad solo on here. So whatever is 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2, those are in no way bad solos. I'm literally just ranking these as my favorites. I have reasons. Most of the reasons have nothing to do with the guitar solo themselves, itself, and every reason to do with how Frank deals with that guitar solo. On this album, there are 6 guitar solos. He does them playing in like Lucille. Denny has a solo in Cruise Slide. There's other moments of guitar, but there are 6 solos, definitive solos. Each of those is a live solo, except for one, a live solo from the winter, early spring 79 tour, which some may argue, and some have argued, is the peak of Frank Zappa's guitar playing live career. Like that was his best. That was his apex, the 79 tour. He's released quite a number of solos off there. All the title tracks from the Shut Up and Play Your Guitar series, those are 79 solos. So you have a bunch of 79 solos that are, for the most part, xenocronized. Took the solo, put them on. I think all of them are xenocronized, meaning like the actual rhythm track that is underneath it is not the actual rhythm track that was played during the solo. Though I do think one of them is definitely in the same sort of vein and spirit and might actually be the same rhythm track. We'll get to that when we get to that. But they've all been sort of extracted from their original source and put on a different rhythm track. Sometimes it works for me. Sometimes it does not work for me. There is one studio solo on here, and then I'll tell you what that is. So fantastic solos. But yeah, let's get to them. Number 6, I have Keep It Greasy. And this is the one that does not work for me. Like, it's over this really hyper, really busy 21 vamp. It is the one sort of performance of xenochrony. It's the one instance of xenochronization. I don't know what you call it. When it just truly sounds like it's xenochronized. It truly sounds like the guitar solo is from a different place, from a different experience. It sounds completely disjointed from the song. It kind of works in the context of the album, and we're getting into like imaginary guitar solos, and this is just a bunch of imaginary notes I played, little something extra to keep me going, from day to day, and that's okay. But it sounds like it here, and it doesn't work for me the way it will in a song that is also on this list. The actual solo itself is from the City of Tiny Lights. By this point, the very last week, maybe 2 weeks of the 79 tour, so late March, first day of April. The City of Tiny Lights, that solo section would segue into an instrumental version of Outside Now, and Frank would solo over the Outside Now vamp. So this entire solo is consisting of parts of the early and late show of the Outside Now. And I do think that there were some fantastic moments in this solo, especially right towards the middle of it, where Frank is playing some absolutely crazy stuff. I think the entrance is great. He does this really dramatic noise making, very textured, but aggressively so intro. I just don't think it works with this vamp. It seems way too disconnected. I think there's a quote by somebody in the band who's like, the solo's in I don't know, whatever it's in, and the solo's in 13 or 11, and this is in 21, and they come together once in never or something like that, or once a month. But it's the one that doesn't work for me. I think it's a great solo, and when I'm able to get used to sort of the chaos of the vamp and the rhythm section and focus in on the solo, there are some friggin' amazing moments. But as an entire piece, it's the one thing that doesn't work. Though it is still really, really good, I admit. That's number 6, Keep It Greasy. Number 5 is Watermelon and Easter Hay. It's only about 2 minutes long. It's the only studio solo on here. It's emotional. It definitely has some like of that Watermelon and Easter Hay sort of sentimentality about it. It definitely is more of a like a traditional heartstring kind of emotional type solo than everything else on this. But it's only 2 minutes long. It is kind of short. It's a great solo, right? I mean, it's a great solo. All of these are great solos. But I think compared to the other things on here, which are kind of just going for it monstrosities, the tameness of this gets overshadowed by sort of the aggression of everything else that will come. But again, can't beat the song, can't beat the vehicle. It's just the actual solo itself is just 2 minutes of serving its purpose, but serving it incredibly well. It's almost like it's coming towards the end of the album. We need to wrap things up, so we're not going to drop like a 6-minute solo in your lap. We're going to kind of condense everything to 2 short, terse, really effective minutes. But still, like I said, a fantastic solo. Number 4 is Outside Now, and I would rank this higher if it did not fade out. It fades out. Breaks my heart. It should be longer. What we get before the fade out is fantastic. Love the vamp, love the emotion. This is the one instance where like the sort of, you can kind of feel like even though the solo does originate from A City of Tiny Lights, Outside Now, it's from the same early show, the 31st, that some of the Keep It Greasy solo is from. I'm assuming completely different parts of that. So it does more work with this anachronization because, it is pretty much from the same vamp. But you can still kind of see that, like, I think this is like a studio rhythm section instead of the live version. There is a sort of a little disjointed feel about it, which works. And, even I guess playing it in real time back in 79, maybe Frank had some idea of what it was going to be because it just feels outside now. It feels, it fits the narrative of the story. The vibe fits it. Frank's playing fits it. It definitely also, like Watermelon Easter Hay, is a song that has a little more of an emotional impact and kind of means something other than just Frank being able to like show off for 5 or 6 minutes. It's connected to the story, these imaginary notes that he played, a little extra something to keep him going from day to day. But then it fades out, and that breaks my heart every time it fades out. Still, what we get is fantastic. Number 4, Outside Now. Number 3 is Packard Goose. This, first off, the synchronization works on here because Frank has given the original solo. This is from 2 separate solos. It's from an Easy Meat solo from April 1st, and then it cuts, and you can pretty clearly hear the point in which we switch solos because roughly the first maybe quarter of the solo is from Easy Meat, and it definitely has that Easy Meat aggression, especially in 79 when you just had that death vamp. It's got that aggressive attitude. It's definitely more of a forceful, grab you by the throat type solo. Then right about the 5:25 mark of the song, we switch into the second half of the solo, or the second. It's not the second half of the solo because I think it's probably 75% of the solo that remains, maybe 66%. But the second source for the solo, which is the opening solo from March 27th, which was generally referred to as persona non grata on like Setlist and Tape Traders. It had this very wide open vamp. But what Frank has done with this vamp is very much this very stark, very like dun 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 dun. Just very like direct, almost King Crimson-ish, and some of the things they would do. Why am I thinking King Crimson? Because just King Crimson have vamps like that? Why am I thinking that reminds me of King Crimson? Not sure it does. But anyways, that's weird. But it has this very dun 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 dun, very stark, very like clear like rhythm. And the solo, and because of that, there's so much space between it. Like as the solo goes on, Vinny gets a lot more busy and a lot more stuff starts happening. But like early on, all that space between like the sort of exclamations of the vamp you could almost put any solo in there. Like this Zenocraty works. You can almost drop anything in there, and it seems like it's going to be able to work around this vamp. And that early aggression from Easy Meat works perfectly. And then as we get the vamp and we kind of settle into things, that persona non grata vamp, which tends to be over a much less rigid space, a very open space, a very frank and kind of do whatever he wants type space. To have then that drop in once we've settled down, kind of bring it down a little bit, but then also like open it up in a weird way, works perfectly. I mean, it's just an absolutely fantastic solo, and what Frank has put around it highlights the strength of both of these parts of the solos so incredibly well. It's just a great listen, very aggressive. The energy is high the entire time. Frank's playing, as in all of these solos, is like peak form. Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. But the vamp works, and it almost seems I would like to almost hear this vamp with just different solos dropped into it, because I think they would all work. That's how good this vamp is. That's number 3, Packer Goose. Number 2 is He Used to Cut the Grass. This is a very wide open vamp. It is also from an opening solo. I think March 23rd is what I've read, or what I believed way back in the day, like late 90s when I was like reviewing all these tapes. But it definitely sounds like one of those opening persona non grata vamps. There are tapes in circulation that have the 25th as the He Used to Cut the Grass solo, but it's not from the 25th, but the vamp is very similar. My understanding is everything on here is anachronized except for Watermelon and Easter Hay, which is like a studio solo, so whatever. But this one might be the live track, or at least pretty much following what they would have been doing in the live track. So I think that's one of the reasons why this solo works for well for me. Also, over the years, as I revisit these more and more, this is probably one of my least favorite back when I first started listening to this album, because it doesn't have this really rigid vamp that Frank gets to dance around on guitar, or it doesn't have the sort of like the arpeggio lifting energy of like Outside Now or Watermelon and Easter Hay, those vamps which just give the solo sort of this melodic drive. It's absent of all those things. And so Frank is really free to explore and go in a lot of different places. And I think it took me a lot of time listening to this solo to really like find all the little nuances and all the little detours and all the little places he goes, and really appreciate how much is going on in this solo. He solos for a while. Ike comes back in with some narration. I think this is some Ike narration. Maybe it's Central Scrutinizer. I think it's Ike narration. And then we go back into soloing again after it's done. It's really, really long. And like, I'm almost positive the only source material is the one solo. To think that Frank like opened up a show with like a 5, 6, 7 minute solo that's this exploratory and this out there, like that's why some people argue that 79 was his best tour for soloing. But this is just, it's intense Frank, it's like direct Frank, it's pure Frank, it's just like he's distilled to his purest essence in solos like this, where he's just able to like do whatever he wants in the band. It's just kind of follow him, but it never gets too chaotic. But it's like a conversation, but he's doing most of the talking and you're just enthralled with what he's saying. And he doesn't need to get up and act anything out or do anything crazy, because just what he's telling you is enough to satisfy. I think to me, it's the solo on here that over the years, every time I return to it, I hear something different. It gets better. It's one that you need to soak in this solo for a while, and it just gets better with age. It's like a fine wine. He used to cut the grass. That's what he would do while the wine was just aging in his cellar. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And then my favorite solo, not the best solo, like I said earlier, because I truly think He Used to Cut the Grass is the best solo on here. But my favorite solo, especially because I think it works so incredibly well on volume 1 of Joe's Garage, which I think is the strongest of the 3. It's Toto Line / On the Bus. Just the way the solo drops in, that da-da-da, right after Wet T-Shirt Night, Fembody in a Wet T-Shirt, the sort of middle part with the da-da-da-da-da-da, and then we go back into the solo. Just everything about it works. this solo happens to come from an Inca Rhodes from 79, which is like an 8 minute solo, and it's been reduced to like, we get roughly what, 2.5 minutes of it. But that 8 minute solo is that da-da-da theme that opens up on the bus, just explored for 3 times as long as what we get here. But I think this is masterful editing by Frank. Like, I think if there was no way he was going to release a solo, it's been released. It's called Occam's Razor. It's on One Shot Deal. You should get that. It is a fantastic release. But I think his editing, if he knew he wasn't going to be able to release those solo and he wanted to use parts of it, it works great. Like, One Shot Deal did not come out until like decades later, and yet I had loved this solo for years, for decades before I ever heard the full version. This is a fantastic solo. The way Frank edits it, the way he uses it in the middle of the first volume, everything about it, I think is just, it lifts up that first volume. It's exactly what that volume needed, when it needed it. Such a beautiful placement. The solo is perfectly well crafted. It is so good. It is so sweet. It is just a perfect all around creation by Frank, both in the original playing and the way he edited it later. But yeah, absolutely love that solo. It is not the best solo on here. He Used to Cut the Grass is the best solo on here. But I like Total Line / On the Bus is my favorite. That's what they look like in written form right there. Again, I know a lot of people like Keep It Greasy. How can you put Watermelon in Easter A this low? I'll defend Outside Now forever because it fades out. But they're all great solos. So let's just get that out of the way. All right. And this is where the album falls, right there. Amongst all the others, it is up there. It is in the top 10, number 4. I mean, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. It actually might be a little more consistent than You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 2, but Volume 2 has 3 solos, which I think are perfect. They achieved perfect scores in my ranking system. And so that bumps it up to number 3. But Joe's Garage, it is fantastic. And some would argue, maybe even me, that the solos represent Frank at the peak of his guitar playing career. It is his apex mountain, as Bill Simmons is wont to say about other things. But anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. I think Joe's Garage is probably the most controversially debated album in Frank Zappa's catalog, right? Because some people think it's by far his best. Some people don't enjoy it. Some people are in the middle on it. I think I'm kind of one of those in the middle on it people. But I love the passion around the album. I love any passion around music. So yeah, love to know your thoughts on this solos, which ones you would rank. Really, really love it. Especially those of you who ranked the solos before watching the video. You know I appreciate you for doing that. So thank you. But anyways, that's all I got. Subscribe, like, share, go listen to music, go listen to He Used to Cut the Grass, and also listen to On the Bus. But On the Bus, you got to listen to Fembot, then On the Bus, then Why Does It Hurt? Because that sequence is just so good and yeah, so beautiful. And all that other stuff, whatever, and leave comments. But that's it. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.